And hello fellow aviators, VREF here. Welcome to this special Halloween night stream. We are in Boston, Massachusetts. Coastal Airways charter with the Florida Panthers. We're taking them over to Detroit for the next game in their regular season. I believe it's game 9 for them, and they had a tough overtime loss to the Boston Bruins last night, but that's not going to stop them from trying to get a win against the Detroit Red Wings, who have a high-flying offense. So glad to have each of you aboard tonight. This is a special Midnight in the MadDog, and we'll have a special tale when we get up to cruise altitude to make this a special event tonight. So without further ado, let's hop back into the flight deck here. You're seeing the terminal here on the Fly Tampa Boston scenery. It's a really nice scenery. We're at the satellite terminal gate Alpha 16, and here we are back in the flight deck now. Sean, welcome aboard. The MadDog howls at midnight. That is exactly right. And we're gonna have a interesting tale for our when the clock strikes midnight, at least here in Central Time, once we get up to cruise flight. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get this flight briefed up. I already have most everything loaded on here, so we should be able to get out of the gate in the next few minutes or so. I'm not sure why it's putting my head up so high in the cockpit there, but let's go ahead and get our brief out of the way. So first things first, let's look at the weather. One thing I did notice is that the jet stream has moved its way south to us now, so we're gonna have quite a headwind actually on our flight. But for now, looking at pretty nice weather in Boston and in Detroit. Boston right now, winds are 130 at 6. They're actually taking off for only 4 right. 10 miles visibility, broken 7,000. Temperature 7, dew point -1, and 3003 on the meters. And it's looking like the forecast is not too bad for the rest of the day here in Boston. Detroit, also not too bad weather-wise. It's actually gone downhill a little bit since last time I looked at it, but winds are out of the northwest at 9 knots, 10 miles, scattered at 1200, broken at 1800 now. Temperature 0, dew point -2, 3013 on the meters. And the forecast is calling for conditions to improve, overcast up to 3000. So we didn't have an alternate when we were originally dispatched for this flight. So let's keep it that way for now. Looks good. Forecast is looking good when we get out there. Let's take a look at some of the air precision support graphics, as they call them now. Actually, Jason was showing me a cool thing. If you just click for what they would use for mobile devices, there's a little click link there. It'll pretty much overlay everything you would need on this map. So you can see our route today from Boston. We're basically going to be heading right over Buffalo and then across Lake Erie into Detroit. So pretty nice weather all along the route. Looks like they are having some snow in Erie, Pennsylvania, and also in Cleveland, Ohio. So probably aren't going to land on the lake shore if we have some issues. Probably go a little farther south into Ohio. They're also having snow in Pittsburgh, it looks like, and other parts of Pennsylvania. Sean says that we had snow on the ground here. Okay, so snow on the ground. I guess you're in the Michigan area. Is that correct, Sean? So maybe we'll see some snow on the ground when we get up to Detroit. But looking pretty good. No SIGMETs, no airmets in this area. Everything's back out over the ocean, it looks like. I'm just going to double check with this. And yeah, so that map did not show the airmets. We just have a lot of icing, obviously. Some high turbulence to our north there, moderate from 18 to 30. And some low turbulence when we get closer to Buffalo and Lake Erie. Moderate turbulence from level 180 to 3,000 feet. And also some high turbulence, moderate 18 to 300, heading over into the Detroit area. So we'll just probably keep the seatbelt signs on for this flight. It's not a super long flight, and that's basically what we're going to plan on. We do have the jet stream kind of in this area down south right now. You can see quite a bit of precipitation along our route of flight. Sean says probably an eighth of an inch or less, not much on the grass, but not too much on the pavement. Okay, good. So we'll have pretty good braking action on the runway when we get into Detroit there. Let's go ahead and hop back up into the flight deck. Let's take a look at our release really quickly. And first things first, we don't have any takeoff alternates today. It's not too bad weather-wise here in Boston. For special airport information, nothing that should affect us. MEL-wise, it's a clean airplane. I checked the maintenance status on the tablet here in the Leonardo MD-83. Everything looks good. No TAMs, nothing that should affect us this evening here on VATSIM for this flight. I reviewed everything and we shouldn't have any issues with our flight. Either way, adverse weather, we already went over that. Maybe some a bit of wintry weather as we get along our route, lower altitudes, and maybe even on the ground in Detroit. Just high winds and some turbulence up at cruise. Our taxi routing out of Boston here, let's take a look at this. So right now they're departing runway 4 right. So leaving the satellite terminal here, we'll probably exit on Echo, and then it'll probably be a right turn on Bravo. Bravo all the way to 4 right. And we're looking at 10,006 feet of runway. It's dry, standard abort criteria. Our performance data is set with the flaps at 7.5 and speeds of 131, VR 136, V2 145. That's all set. And we'll do standard abort criteria for the our takeoff today. So below 80 knots, we'll reject the takeoff for a variety of reasons. At or above 80 knots, we'll only reject the takeoff for engine fire, severe engine damage, or the inability of the aircraft to get or stay airborne. And if we do lose an engine after V1, we'll just continue around here. It's straight out 3,000 back around to land here at the airport. And the MSA in this area is 2,000 and 2,500 down to the southwest, so that 3,000 should work just fine for that. Clearance-wise, we're squawking 2200. I'm not showing any air traffic controllers on board. Let me double check that really quickly on my vPilot application. Nope, no one is online, so we will be squawking 2200. I'm going to go ahead and put in our cruise altitude here if that's the case, so we can just keep on climbing up. So our cruise altitude is 360 this evening. It's actually morning in the sim, but I'm flying it at around midnight my time, so hence the midnight in the title there. But 360 is now set, and on this Highland 6 RNAV departure, off runway 4 right, climb heading 035, which we do have set there, to 520 feet, then direct Nihant. So let's make sure that's showing. Let me take the yoke away so we can see our CDU. So Nihant, then it's Herbie at or above 4,000, Steak, Sophia, then from Sophia it goes to Sean, and then Highland. And let's see, any speed restrictions for our route of flight? Does not look like we have any speed restrictions. Some of the other directions you do have speed restrictions, and you can see the magenta note here. It's also depicted on the map view there, but no speed restrictions on our section of the departure. So after Highlands, let's look at the flight release here. We're going direct to Cambridge, and then legwise to Q route. So I do not, so I can scroll this down. There we go. So Cambridge, then we have Page, Puppy, Gonzi, Donio, Viper, Goose, Wolfman. That's perfect for tonight, Halloween night. Mav, and that's on the arrival, the Top Gun arrival. So let's take that. Let's check that out. So Goose, Wolfman, Mav, Top Gun, Hallowed, Chester, Ghost, and that should be Rider and Vectors. Yep. Total distance was shown in the flight management computer is at 589 miles, so quite a bit shorter than our last flight that we took from Fort Lauderdale up here to Boston. And we were planned at a total distance of 586, so that's looking great. So everything's looking good in that regard. We'll plan to get nav mode at 400 feet. That should keep us on the proper headings. And then VNAV at 1,000 feet AGL as we clean up the aircraft. Transition altitude is going to be flight level 180. Probably going to need some anti-ice in the climb, so we'll be cognizant of that as we climb out. So any questions? I think, Sean, you had a great comment there. Some great waypoint names tonight. I agree, especially on the Top Gun arrival. That's one of my favorite arrivals in the United States, just because of the fact that it's the Top Gun arrival. That's pretty cool. One of my favorite movies. I actually really liked the new movie a lot. I know some people don't like it as much, but I really did. I thought it was interesting, especially when I watched it in the theater on the big screen. And personally, I liked that it didn't have as much time doing the love story stuff. I'm not much of a love story movie person. I like the action, so I feel like there's a little more action in the new Top Gun movie. But regardless, we're getting to do the Top Gun arrival tonight. If I could stream Kenny Loggins' Danger Zone without copyright violations, I'd do it, but can't do that streaming on YouTube. I would gladly pay for it, but I have no idea how to do that. So, all right, we're just firing up the APU here. Let's take a quick look at the outside of the aircraft. You can see, yeah, nobody else here right now on VATSIM, and beautiful payware scenery here. Now, I have not gotten any of the payware sceneries that are available for Boston. They also, Arcade Bridger also came out with a Bridges add-on. Might get it in the future if it goes on sale. I just don't come up here often enough to warrant spending all that money on Boston. So once we get our APU online, all right, looks like it is fired up. Let's make sure our frequency and voltage are looking good. They are. So APU is online. I'm going to go ahead and get the air APU going, and we can disconnect the ground power unit. So I'll let our ground crew know that. Dismiss GPU, please. Excellent. Let's got that going on. And we are about ready to do our before start check. I'm going to tell them to go ahead and prepare the aircraft for pushback and departure. Excellent. Make sure all the doors were closed again, and they are. Everything's looking good. They're getting the GPU off the aircraft. Excellent. Just going to go ahead.
Hello, Captain. We're ready for pushback.
Hey, Roger. Put the seatbelt sign on now. The fuel truck's disconnected. Before start check, 0 fuel weights. Actually do need to set that. I did not get that. 0 fuel weight today is 102,400 pounds. That is set. Takeoff condition computer set. Stabilizer trim set. Flap takeoff selector set. Airspeed bugs and TRP set. Fuel pumps, our fuel and pumps, 19,900 planned, 19,700 on board. We need 18,600 min fuel for takeoff, and the pumps. Let's see, stand by. Yeah, we do have center tank fuel, so turn them all on. Fuel and pumps, 19,700, pumps on, doors closed, hydraulics on, and high. Before start check complete.
Locking gear.
We'll go ahead and make our radio call. Boston traffic, Riptide 5800 MD-83, pushing start gate off of 16. We're planning a 4-right departure, Boston. Cool. We will head back. Sean, you liked the Top Gun movie too? Awesome. Glad I'm not the only one. And looks like you're waiting for the sale to at least the city pack. Yeah. I'm wondering if that's going to be Nose. See, I need nose left, tail right.
Release parking brakes.
All right, brakes released, clear to push, tail
All engines clear. Start at will.
right. Thank you. All right, we can start them up, they said. Here we go. We're pushing back. All right, start 2 to 1. And 2. So waiting on that max. Remember, we do have oil pressure. There's max motoring. Fuel flow and EGT. Alrighty, here's our 40%. That's our starter cut out. There we go. And we're stabilized. Let's go ahead and start number 1. And 2. Oil pressure. And there's max motoring. Fuel flow. EGT. Surely they're going to stop the pushback. There they go. There's 40%. Stand by. The starter off. I don't want to exceed the limitations on that.
Cockpit to ground.
Alright, brake
We
set.
have a good engine start. You can disconnect.
Well, the robo captain said it, so. Alright, let's go ahead and do our after start flows here. Shut down to APU. The APU. As people affectionately call it. Just making that up. Just heard people say that just joke. Alright, let's get the air supply set. There we go. Let's do flaps 7.5. Watch your knees. There we go, that was good.
Tow truck disconnect. Bypass field removed.
TARA.
Ride is
Get
clear.
this off. RTO. Alright. They're all clear. Okay. Let's do the before taxi check. Air conditioning panel set. Pitot heat and ignition on. Anti-ice. Oh, we have the ignition off for now. I'll turn it on prior to takeoff to respect the 10-minute limitation. Anti-ice off. Engine instruments check. Flight controls free. Flaps and slats 7.5. TO set. Transponder TARA pneumatic crossfeed closed. Before taxi check complete. Just waiting on the salute here. There's our salutes. All right, excellent. And we are out of here. Let's go. We set parking brakes immediately. Yeah, no, get out of the way, dude. Run. Yep, I see you have the pen. Alright. We got a schedule to keep, buddy. Panthers want to go play the Red Wings. Alright, let me pull up our, sorry about that. I'm going to turn on track IR now. There we go. There, clear left and clear right. Said, and I'll get our taxi diagram up on the screen. Computer's thinking hard. Alright, here we are. Alright, cool. So we can all kind of be on the same page. So we actually are going to take Echo right here. Maybe they take Kilo, actually. It looks like you can take Kilo. Huh, let's try Kilo. I haven't tried Kilo yet, and there's nobody here, so. And Boston traffic, Riptide 5800 MD-83, leaving from the satellite terminal, taxiing runway 4 right via Kilo Bravo, Boston. Kilo Bravo. Yeah, it says this is like the cargo area, so yeah, you can see all the containers and other things over there. Really beautiful scenery. And you can see I'm getting really great performance on it right now. Coming in the other night, for whatever reason, when I get to the end of flights, it seems like things get really laggy. No trouble at the beginning of flights. So I'm not sure exactly what causes that, but it's only when I'm streaming though. I think it's just there are a lot of resources being used to stream. And so it looks like we have that master caution. That's associated because we have the art in op since we're flexing. So I'll go ahead and cancel that. Alright, so it's going to be the first right turn on Bravo here. We are clear to the left. And clear to the right. Alright, excellent. See the beautiful fall colors here up in Boston, Massachusetts. Alright, right turn, Bravo. Here we go. Yeah, I would like to try that city pack, Sean. Like you're saying, I'm thinking a lot of these buildings look so much nicer, I'm sure, especially with this airport being right next to downtown. There's a big cruise ship, and they're screaming out there. Look at them, they're spinning around in circles. I would not want to be on that ship. Alright, nobody's coming in on runway 9 or anything here. Just the approach. Hold short, and it's VMC conditions, so not in effect. That is a crazy ship though. Oh my goodness. I'm guessing Cliff's uncle must be captain on that cruise line over there.
Traffic, 90 to 1106, heavy, 10 miles out, 4 right.
Alright, so we have an aircraft 10 miles out, 4 right. So we better pick up our pace here to get out before he does. We'll go ahead and flip all our lights on. We'll get going here. Boston traffic, Riptide 5800 MD-83, taking off 4 right, departing to the west. Boston. Alright, clear right. Clear left. For takeoff check. Takeoff config checked. Ignition selector B. Altimeters checked and ABS and spoilers armed. B4. Takeoff. Check. Complete. Only 4 right was verified on the sign. We're looking for a heading of 035 when we line up. That's what we're showing. Runway 4 right's verified. I have controls. Here we go. Set thrust. Thrust set. Clamp. Knots, check. B1, rotate. Ooh. Positive rate, you're up. Feel some of that wind out here. Nav mode. Alright, climb thrust please. Pitching down, 10 degrees. Oh, we got out plenty of time before that United guy got in. Had to keep moving though. Doesn't take a jet very long to go 10 miles. Beautiful view of the fall colors. And our clean maneuvering speed is 225 knots. So once we get up there, I'll go ahead and get our flaps fully retracted. Let's go ahead with the flaps to up here. Just the leading edge devices out, and then 225 will get completely clean on the wing. All right, and flaps up. Autopilot on. Actually, I don't think we got VNAV. There's VNAV and autopilot on. There we go. Go ahead with our after takeoff items here. Ooh, I can't quite lean over enough to get to the hydraulics. Let's switch over to the FO side. There we go, we got that stowed, get the hydraulics to off. And we'll check the pressurization's all looking good. We're gonna be up in the clouds here pretty soon. And our temperature's at 3C, so let's go ahead and get the engine, the anti-ice on. Open up our mag cross feeds. And wings on, wing anti-ice on, airfoil anti-ice on. There we go. Perfect. And last but not least, let's get the ART on. Center fuel pressure low. Time to turn off the center tank fuel pumps. We burn that up. There we go. It's off. Not carrying nearly as much fuel on this flight. Sean said it's Boston, Cliff's hometown. I think, yeah. I mean, there's no telling how many brothers, cousins, nieces, sisters, siblings, whatever you want to call it, he might have in this town. And I'm pretty sure that was his one of his relatives that's captain of that ship. That was insane. Should probably say right full rudder, right full rudder. Spinning hard right. And you're asking if I have the Bravo throttle. That is correct. I do have the Honeycomb Bravo. Yep. I really do enjoy it. Alright, there's 10,000 feet. Let's go ahead and give the bells a run in the back. And do a quick check on our pressurization. Yeah, it's climbing at about 100 feet per minute. And everything's looking good. Differential pressure's at 4. Cabin altitude just below 1,000 feet, so we're looking good. And accelerating now, 300, which there's no problem with that on our departure, as we saw, as briefed. Here it is on the bridge plate. And now to Sean now. Already have a pretty stiff left to right crosswind at 54 knots. We're only at 10,000 feet, so I think our release was showing the cruise winds at 235 at 155 knots. So that's a pretty stiff breeze. Good thing none of us are doing long haul flights to the west coast this evening, because it would take quite some time. I think some of these maps can show the winds there. You can see them. They are pretty stiff. So actually I'm glad I'm not flying back down to Fort Lauderdale from Boston tonight. Not be the best night to do that. With really strong headwinds the entire way pretty much. Alright, we're about to get on top here. Sean, you said, did I end up getting those MD-83 throttle handles? I did. So I tried to install them a couple weeks back, and I wasn't able to get them on quite right. I didn't have my screwdriver with me and stuff, so I just gave up. But I need to put it on. And I also got the 737 throttles, the ones that are wired with the toga switches and the auto throttle disconnects. So I plan to work on those when I get back from World Flight. I'll be on vacation, so I'll have a little bit of time to fool around with that. But just the standard airline throttles, thrust levers work pretty well for the MadDog right now. I have a toga switch set up on it, and my auto throttle disconnect on the Honeycomb Alpha. It's just where I put it so that I can quickly disconnect the auto throttle when I'm flying. And it works pretty well for now, but I'd like to talk to Jason about those MD-80 throttle handles. I think he has them. I'm kind of wondering if one of the parts I got was defective. I'm not sure it was, so I'd like to check with Jason to see. Almost seemed like one of the slots was not cut out all the way, maybe, or something. But yeah, I'll have to check with him. All right, I am going to turn off the track IR now, so we're not swinging around so much. There we go. Let's be a little steadier on the camera angles and such now. Get a quick view of the outside of the aircraft. Let's climb out of Boston. Look at that. You can see the exhaust making a hard swing to the left side of the aircraft because of the winds. That's crazy. Sean, hopefully I get it resolved. Yeah, I hope so too, because I really would like to use those thrust levers for sure. But it is what it is. Well, let's kind of see what's the first fix our release was going to give us some fuel numbers at. Gotta make sure I don't miss our 18,000 checks here in a second. Cambridge, it looks like. Okay. So we'll wait till Cambridge to do our first check on our fuel burns. Just 180, let's get those lights off. That's the thing the ACARS is very concerned with. So I'll get that off. Let's switch this over to N1. There we go. And 29902 on the altimeters now. I set left. Wow, that was one swing of the knob there. Nice. 29902 is cross-checked. I don't believe I actually read the climb check. I should have done that right at 1,000 or 10,000 feet. We are above all the icing now, so I'm going to turn off our airfoil anti-ice, our engine anti-ice. It's all closing, and we can turn off the ignition now. We'll go ahead and close our pneumatic cross feeds again. There we go. And we're heading toward Cambridge, I believe. Let's get our range out on our navigation display. Yep, Cambridge, 40 nautical miles it looks like. There it is. Okay, I was like, why is it not showing up on there? It's longer than 40 nautical miles. 88 nautical miles. 40 nautical miles from Cambridge to Page. That's what I was looking at. Okay, perfect. Well, climb check ignition is off. APU is off. Fuel pumps are set. Spoilers and ABS's disarm off. And then flaps and slats are up, lights out, stowed. Climb check is officially complete now that I read it out loud. Sean, you're asking, are you all ready for world flight? Yes, I am ready. I'm actually planning to fly with Nate tomorrow night to do some practice to get ready, and looking forward to that. And I'll probably fly left seat, I'm guessing. I believe he's been checked out in the right seat, so might be able to do 2 flights, one where I can be pilot flying, one pilot monitoring, since the duties change somewhat, depending on what your role is on the flight deck. And then I'm actually checked out in both seats, so I'll be flying left and right seat in the actual event coming up in the next few days. So, and I believe the schedule is going to be published publicly here pretty soon, so stay tuned for that. I'm definitely excited that there are a couple of us coastal pilots on the Team SoCal, so that's going to be a lot of fun. All right, get that. I'm curious what our winds are showing now. Look at that, 129 knots, almost right off the nose. So Sean, you're asking, is it tricky changing over from the coastal flows? It's not too bad. And honestly, it's helped that I've been flying the MadDog so much the last few weeks because I'm not as ingrained in the coastal 737 procedures at the moment. So I'm probably not going to fly the 73 for coastal until I get back from World Flight, just so that I don't have any negative transfer. But I mean, it's the same aircraft. You're technically doing a lot of the same things. It's just at World Flight we don't do as many checks as we do on our coastal flights, just because you don't really have to check all of those things in the sim, and since it's real switches and real components, you don't want to unnecessarily check stuff and break the simulator that's there. So they've really streamlined it quite a bit just to keep things to the essentials. And we do check some things that, like we check like oxygen masks and stuff, and obviously there aren't real oxygen masks in that plane because you're in a simulator. It would be dangerous to have a bunch of oxygen canisters in the in there. You don't need it. It's a fire hazard. You're not going to be at 35,000 feet in reality. So, but there's like it makes a noise and stuff. So it'll be things like that. And then we have the call outs are slightly different during World Flight compared to coastal. So you just have to remind yourself of that. And I'll be honest, since I live in Nashville and I'm flying all the way out there to California, I know like last year you have a good 5+ hours to review right before you get there. So I'll probably be doing that again. So it's all just doubly ingrained in my head. And once you get there, you just start going through the reps. It's second nature. But good question. Good question. It can be a little bit of a challenge. So Nate and I are gonna work on it a little bit tomorrow night, and I look forward to that. All right, we're getting close to our cruise altitude. We're just about 3,000 feet away. Let's take a quick look at our pressurization just to make sure that's still looking good, and it is. Cabin's climbing at a much higher rate now at about 800-900 feet per minute, but we're still staying in the 6,000 to 7,000 foot range. Delta P is at just under 8.0 right now, and you can see the outflow valve is still somewhat moving. Yep, there it is. It's moving, so it is still in auto mode. I heard back from Captain Cavu, and he was saying that that's really about the only indication you'll get in the flight deck that the outflow valve is in auto mode, is just that wheel moving and the outflow valve indicator moving. So gotta look. Norfolk International Airport. Hey VREF, hello. Thank you so much for being here. Norfolk International Airport. I like the name there. I'm excited to have you on here tonight. And Sean, you say very cool. Good luck to you guys, and hope to catch you guys on the stream. Yes, absolutely. I know the entire thing is, the plan is to have everything streamed the entire week. I believe it actually is going to start on Friday this week with There's some of the guys flying from Ontario all the way out to Sydney, and that's kind of a test. Make sure everything's working right. But I believe it will all be streamed also, so stay tuned for details on that. I'll try to share it on my channels and on the Discord and keep everybody up to date. All right, we're leveling off now at our cruising altitude of 360. I'm going to go ahead and hit cruise here on the thrust. And let's do a quick check. Top of climb, we were planning to have 15,300 pounds of fuel. We actually have 16,200, so we're about 900 pounds ahead of schedule at this point. And Norfolk International Airport, I will say, I really like the Norfolk International Airport, and we actually do fly there in coastal. So, man, we'll have to get you on a stream where we're actually going to Norfolk. So, like the name, very cool. All right, well, here we are at our cruise altitude, and I did plan that we would have a story, a tale from flight deck past. So, all right. Perfect said I'm doing okay, just a busy week. Planning for 2 primary. Runway is 523. Okay. Very cool. Well, glad to have you on board here. It's actually morning where I am now. It's after midnight. We hit midnight about 15 minutes ago. So I did have this flight in the real time. The team, it's actually showing that they're flying tomorrow morning now on Delta. And they're leaving about 10:30 in the morning. And I don't blame them. They got a good day of rest in Boston. I wonder if they got to do some practice somewhere there in the Boston area. I'd imagine there are quite a few rinks and such that you can use. But our tale for this evening, it comes from the Bermuda Triangle. So I'm sure you all know that the Bermuda Triangle is a place that lives in infamy for any sort of vessel, whether it be a ship or it be an aircraft. But this particular incident occurred around the Bermuda Triangle for a transport category aircraft. So the island of Bermuda, it sits at the apex of a triangle of infamous dimensions. Its southern points are loosely touching the tip of Florida to the west and the island of Puerto Rico to the east. Along the line of its base lie the other islands, the Greater Antilles chain, Cuba, Jamaica, Haiti, the Dominican Republic. To the north of Cuba lies the Bahama Islands, with the most westerly islands hardly a stone's throw from Miami on the mainland coast of the United States. The capital of the Bahamas, Nassau, is situated on the northern shore of New Providence, one of the smallest islands of the group. The area bounded by what is now known as the Bermuda Triangle achieved a certain notoriety when Charles Berlitz published a book on the subject in 1974. The accounts of ships and aircraft lost in strange circumstances are numerous. However, these incidents, or the explanations of the events, may be received. There is no doubt that some of those losses are alarming. Reports dating from the mid-19th century tell of some 50 ships and 20 aircraft mysteriously disappearing. Some vessels have been found abandoned, while other craft at sea and in the air have vanished without any distress signal being transmitted. In many cases, no wreckage of aircraft or ship has ever been found. I mean, there's just weird stuff that goes on in the Bermuda Triangle. And this account that I'm reading, it's actually coming from a book. I put it in the description. It's called Emergency Crisis in the Cockpit by Stanley Stewart. So he's going to tell us here about this very odd aviation occurrence that happened. I'll leave the map up here so we can keep track of where we are. I'll try to do a fuel check also when we get to Cambridge. But let's continue, because one of the strangest aviation mysteries concerns the incident of U.S. Navy Flight 19, which consisted of 5 Grumman TBM-3 Avenger torpedo bombers. The Avengers took off from their base at Fort Lauderdale, just north of Miami on the Florida coast, on 5th December of 1954. The flight was under the command of Lieutenant Charles Taylor and was scheduled to fly a long-range navigation exercise ending back at base. By late afternoon, the aircraft were reported missing and were never seen again. The U.S. Navy patrol aircraft, a twin-engine Martin Mariner flying boat, took off from Banana River Air Station with 13 crew members on board and began a thorough search of the region. But its efforts were also to end in catastrophe. The rescuers' aircraft vanished without trace. In neither case was a distress signal heard, nor at the time was any wreckage found. In April 1987, the 5 Avenger bombers were eventually found lying close together at the bottom of the Atlantic. That is weird. Accounts of these incidents tend to play on the mysterious side of the disappearances, although logical explanations are available for their occurrence. The lead aircraft, flown by Lieutenant Taylor, was known to have compass problems, and he was also unfamiliar with the area. It is believed he thought his position to be over the Gulf of Mexico when in fact he was over the Atlantic. If he had turned east, away from the setting sun, he would eventually have run out of fuel and would have been forced to ditch. The search aircraft was believed to have exploded in midair as a flash in the sky was reported by a ship's crew. The Bermuda Triangle may now be tarnished with a mystical hue, but the number of incidents recorded within its vicinity are not excessive considering the heavy traffic of the region. The figures, in fact, are similar to those of other busy air and sea routes. Each year, many thousands of ships and aircraft navigate the area without incident, and of those who experience difficulty, most successfully overcome their problems. A very few have come closer to danger than their crews would have liked, but with skill, experience, and perhaps some luck, they have defied the allegedly mystical powers of the Triangle. One such relatively recent incident occurred to a Lockheed L-1011 TriStar in 1983, and this is the account that Mr. Stewart's going to focus on today. So Miami International Airport is Eastern Airlines, or was Eastern Airlines' main base, and a large number of flights depart from there to cities all over the U.S. as well as to destinations throughout the Caribbean. Each day, many services crisscross the southern region of the Bermuda Triangle without incident, and the airline has a very good safety record. On the evening of 4th of May, 1983, an EAL TriStar, registration 334 Echo Alpha, returned home to roost at Miami and was parked overnight at the company's terminal building. Normal line maintenance procedures were conducted and scheduled work card tasks were completed. Any outstanding maintenance logbook items were also corrected. Apart from routine maintenance, however, there was also a requirement to conduct a master chip detector check. As early as September 1981, Rolls-Royce, the manufacturers of the 3 RB-211 jets on the TriStar, became concerned over problems being experienced with the engine. Some in-flight failures had occurred necessitating shutdown. The master chip detector is positioned on the left side of the low-pressure compressors and consists of a small magnetic probe which protrudes into one of the oil lines of the engine oil system. If any engine components are subject to wear, small metal particles are flushed through the oil lines and are attracted to the magnetic probe of the detector. The original inspection interval of 250 flying hours was reduced to 25 flying hours in an attempt to detect in an early stage any adverse engine trends. The mechanics servicing the TriStar simply removed the chip detector from each engine and placed it in a plastic bag. Fresh detectors were then fitted in place. The amount of metal particles adhering to each detector was coded and recorded and found satisfactory. If larger amounts of metal particles had been discovered, the detectors would have been sent to a laboratory for analysis of the contamination. Early on the morning of the 5th of May, 334 Echo Alpha was prepared to operate Flight 855, a regular Eastern Airlines scheduled service from Miami to Nassau. Man, that's a short flight for that large of an airplane. Anyways, the flight time for the 156 nautical mile journey was only 37 minutes. At 8:56 Eastern Time, Flight 855 departed from runway 27 right at a takeoff weight of almost 149 tons, carrying a fuel load of 21 tons. On board were 162 passengers, most of whom were vacationers on their way to the Bahamas. In the left-hand seat of the TriStar was Captain Richard Body, and with him on the flight deck was his co-pilot Stephen Thompson, also a captain, and his flight engineer, Second Officer Dudley Barnes. Captain Body was a likable man who was known to be cool and calm under pressure. He had only been on the TriStar since March, and Captain Thompson, a supervisory pilot, was conducting Buddy's second check flight on converting onto the TriStar. Since Body was not yet qualified on the type, technically he was only acting as captain, and Thompson was in command. In the cabin were 7 attendants, supervised by Senior Flight Attendant Shirley Alexo, bringing the total on board to 172. The Miami weather on departure was fine, with a broken cloud layer at 2,300 feet and a visibility of 7 miles. The forecast weather for Nassau was good, although some scattered rain showers were expected, quite normal for the time of year. As the TriStar began its initial climb, however, a frontal system was passing through Nassau's International Airport, and the sky was overcast. The cloud had reduced visibility to 4 miles now, and light rain was falling. If the passage of the front was delayed, weather conditions at their arrival time could deteriorate. Captain Body climbed the aircraft on the westerly runway direction at 170 to 180 knots, following the Miami 5 departure routing, and at about 500 feet, turned onto a heading of 250 magnetic. Thompson radioed departure control, and 334 Echo Alpha was instructed to turn left and to proceed all the way around to the south of the airport to an easterly heading. At 1,000 feet, the captain retarded the engines to the climb power setting of 1.4 engine power ratio, which is what EPR stands for, and flight engineer Barnes routinely scanned his instruments. Alright, we'll stop right there because we just passed Cambridge. We have 15,200 pounds of fuel. Let's see what we were planned to have at Cambridge. Looks like 14,400, so we're 800 pounds heavy, so that's good. Alright, we're going to continue this story now, so here we go. I'll pull the map back up. Alright, so the Eastern Airlines flight is now taking off out of Miami, heading to Nassau. So passing 1,500 feet, Barnes radioed Eastern Airlines on VHF radio box 3 with the departure time, then completed the climb checklist. So this is before ACARS. You had to radio in your times. Once more, the engineer scanned his panel, and Body accelerated the aircraft, retracting the flaps in sequence, and by 5,000 feet, the TriStar was climbing normally at 250 knots. Out of 10,000 feet, the speed was further increased to 300 knots for the en route climb to the cleared flight level of 230. At 9:01, Thompson called Miami Center, and Flight 855 was cleared on a direct route to Nassau. Body turned the TriStar slightly right to track 110 degrees, and the lightly laden aircraft continued its rapid climb. Passing 180, the altimeters were selected to 299 or 2, and at 9:08, the autopilot captured the cruising level of 230. And Body brought the thrust levers back to the cruise power setting of 1.3 on the EPRs, and they maintained 300 knots. The takeoff until level flight had taken only 12 minutes, and with New Providence Island fast approaching, the aircraft would not remain in cruise for long. It was a short, busy little flight which kept the crew on their toes. Permission for descent was requested from Miami, and 334 Echo Alpha was cleared to 9,000 feet. At 9:10, after cruising for only 2 minutes, the thrust levers were retarded to flight idle. The nose dipped in descent at 80 miles from Nassau, and the aircraft decelerated to 280 knots. Thompson changed frequency to Miami Oceanic Control, which would retain radio contact until Flight 855 descended below 6,000 feet. They would then be cleared to Nassau Approach. Meanwhile, Flight Engineer Barnes contacted Nassau Approach on the other radio to inform them of their imminent arrival. Nassau Approach, good morning. Eastern 855 is flight level 200, descending DME 70. Good morning, Eastern 855. I have the 0900 weather for you. Cloud ceiling 1000 with a visibility of 4 miles. The east and south, the cloud base is down to 500 to 800 feet, and there are thunderstorms to the north. Wind 300 at 3 knots. Temperature 75. Altimeter 29er, 89er. And recently there has been some light rain. You're number 2 for the approach, following a light wind, which is 30 miles ahead. At Nassau Airport, the runway in use was 32. It's an 11,000 foot long runway. Although with the light wind, the TriStar could land almost straight in on the opposite direction, runway 14. A large thundercloud to the northwest precluded its use. Neither runway approach, however, had an instrument landing system, and guidance for final approach to land would have to be a non-precision approach using the VOR. As a result, the minimum weather conditions for landing at Nassau were stated to be cloud base no lower than 400 feet and visibility no less than 1 mile. A cold front lay across the island, and the large storm cell would be seen ahead on the radar. Because of the weather and other landing traffic, Flight 855 was cleared for a DME arc approach to runway 32. The procedure was lengthy and involved flying an arc of 10 miles radius from the airport all the way around to the southeast before turning on to final approach. There was no approach radar available, and with the weather close to limits and deteriorating, it would not be an easy approach for Body to fly. Flight Engineer Barnes continued to scan his control panel when able, but his duties kept him busy. He quickly completed the landing data card, then read through the descent and in-range checklists. He then radioed Eastern Airlines, company office at Nassau with the estimated arrival time and with some routine passenger details. Suddenly, as the TriStar descended through 15,000 feet, Captain Body noticed the oil low pressure warning light for number 2 engine illuminated on the pilot's center pedestal. He called out to the flight engineer. Barnes had not scanned his instruments for about 5 minutes as he completed his tasks, but the oil quantity and pressure gauges were positioned in the center of his panel at just below eye level, so were easy to check. Throughout the flight, the oil quantity gauges had remained steady at 18 quarts, which was a normal reading, although the full level is 21 quarts. Numbers 1 and 3 oil pressure gauges showed in the green, or normal range, and the oil quantity indicators measured 15 quarts. Fluctuations of up to 3 quarts were not unusual and did not give cause for concern, but the number 2 readings were a different matter. Only 8 quarts were indicated as remaining in the number 2 tail engine, and the oil pressure was oscillating between 15 and 25 pounds per square inch. The minimum acceptable normal operating pressure was 30 psi. Well, Flight Engineer Barnes had never before had oil pressure trouble on the TriStar, but there was no doubt that he had a problem now. If the engine continued to run in this low oil condition, it would not be long before it seized, and Captain Body had little choice but to call for it to be shut down. The flight engineer initiated a precautionary engine shutdown by closing number 2 thrust lever and by selecting the fuel ignition switch to cut off to disconnect the fuel supply. As the engine ran down, the captain called for the APU and the tail to be started. This was normal practice on the TriStar with one engine failed, and the APU would help supply the systems normally powered by the number 2 engine. 334 Echo Alpha was light, and the flight could be continued on 2 engines without difficulty. The weather at Nassau, however, was posing a problem. Rain was beginning to fall again, and at times the visibility was dropping to as low as a quarter of a mile, well below the minimum 1 mile permitted. Flying an approach on 2 engines in poor weather without radar is not recommended, and it could be some time before conditions improved. Even if the weather cleared quickly, the light wind ahead would still delay their arrival. The time was now 9:15 and the range to Nassau 50 miles, with Miami just over 100 miles away. With the low visibility at destination, it might be quicker and more prudent to return home. Weather conditions there were fine, and there was also good engineering cover. If a major problem existed with the number 2 engine, it would be easier to repair it at the base. The crew quickly conferred over their predicament, and the captain made the sensible decision to return to Miami. They would be back on the ground there in, at most, maybe about 30 minutes. Captain Body advanced numbers 1 and 3, thrust levers to 1.35 EPR, and held the aircraft level at 12,000 feet while Thompson called Miami Oceanic Control. Miami Eastern 855, we have lost number 2 engine and we've stopped the descent at 12,000. We'd like reclearance to return to Miami. Roger, Eastern 855, you're cleared to make a 180 onto a heading of 290 and maintain 12,000. For further clearance, contact Miami Center on 127.0. At 9:17, Flight 855 commenced a left turn at 300 knots, level at 12,000 feet, back towards Miami. The flight engineer called the company at Nassau on VHF-3 to say they were returning, and Captain Body informed Senior Flight Attendant Alexu of the bad news. Whilst turning through the north, Thompson re-established contact with Miami Center, and the controller was ready to receive Flight 855, but did not yet have the TriStar back on his radar scope. Eastern 855, just continue on to the heading. We'll have you back on radar shortly. Did you want any higher altitude? Affirmative. We'd like to go up, say, 19 to 21,000. Okay, Eastern 855, what are you in? Left turn now? Yes, sir. Eastern 855, climb to flight level 200 for now. 20,000, roger. Once again, the flight engineer was kept busy with his tasks as he completed the engine shutdown checklist and the secondary items required to tidy his panel. Okay, 855, I have you back in radar here, leaving about 136. Proceed on 270 heading. Radar vectors toward Biscayne. Okay, 270 heading back to Biscayne, roger. And any problem that we should know about? We've had precautionary shutdown on number 2 engine. Okay, you need any special handling? Negative. Okay. As sorry, it's weird having to read air traffic control transcripts like that. Anyways, as 334 Echo Alpha climbed through 15,000 feet, Captain Body faced a further problem, and the flight began to go seriously wrong. The low oil pressure light for number 3 engine also suddenly illuminated. Oh my gosh, that's a bad day. So with number 2 engine already shut down and number 3 engine now giving trouble, the crew were less than happy with the circumstances. Routine flight was turning out to be anything but routine. Body eased the power back slightly on number 3 engine to see if that would help and reduce the rate of ascent. Almost immediately, before the crew could assess the situation, they saw to their horror the number 1 engine low oil pressure light illuminate as well. Barnes quickly scanned his instruments. The oil pressures on both operating engines were low and dropping, and all the oil quantity gauges indicated 0. A busy little flight of only 10 minutes ago was turning into a major emergency. But this couldn't be right. The oil indicators had to be misreading. It was surely impossible for all 3 engines to lose all their oil in a similar fashion. No, it had to be an electrical fault causing incorrect indications. There was little point in going higher for the time being until everything was checked out, so Body leveled off at 16,000 feet, still flying at 300 knots, while Thompson radioed Miami with details of their problem. And Miami Center Eastern 855, we have some rather serious indications of all 3 oil pressures on all 3 engines down to 0. We believe it to be faulty indications since the chances of all 3 engines having 0 oil pressure and zero quantity is almost nil. However, it's our indication in the cockpit at the present time. Okay, fine. Why don't you turn right about 15 degrees? We'll give you direct to Miami. Maintain flight level 20,000 or whatever altitude you want to maintain, and we're just going to have the emergency equipment standing by for you anyway. Roger, proceed direct to Miami Airport. While Thompson spoke on the number 2 radio box, Barnes switched to VHF-3 to the Miami Technical Center frequency and explained the situation. Could a common electrical source affect the engine instruments, he asked. Captain Body butted in. The low oil pressure and zero oil quantity for the 3 engines seems a faulty indication, since the likelihood of simultaneous oil exhaustion in all 3 engines is 1 in a million, I would think, said the captain. Well, the maintenance personnel at Miami referred to the appropriate manuals and soon came up with a possible cause for the malfunction. The number 2 AC electrical bus bar was the common source for the oil quantity gauges, and the problem might lie in that department. The flight engineer quickly checked the relevant circuit breakers but could find nothing amiss. The bizarre instrument displays remained a mystery. In spite of the indications, however, the flight seemed to be proceeding satisfactorily and body maintained 16,000 feet while letting the speed drop back to 230 knots. In the meantime, Miami Center called back requesting the numbers on board, and Thompson mistakenly replied that there were 168 souls. 168, okay. Does that include your crew? Asked Miami. Negative, sir. Stand by on the crew. With 1 engine shut down and the other 2 displaying alarming indications, the number of crew on board was the last thing on their minds. The Miami controller, of course, was thinking ahead and was concerned that the situation might deteriorate. If the rescue services were required for Flight 855, it would be useful to know the numbers involved. With no reply from Thompson on the number of crew, Miami repeated the request. Well, we've got 3 in the cockpit, said Thompson. We'll have to count in the back, and we'll give that to you in just a minute, sir. Okay. Miami Center, looks like we have 7 in the back. 7 in the back. Okay, Eastern 855, you can descend and maintain 12,000 at your discretion. Thompson had no time to reply to the descent clearance to 12,000 feet, for in an instant the course of events took a turn for the worse. We are going to get back to that in just 1 second. We'll do a quick fuel check right here. Sean, you're doing it. Thanks, man. It's our bedtime story for tonight, for Halloween night. A crazy incident over the Bermuda Triangle back in 1983. So things are about to take a turn for the worse. So Gons, let's see, we were planning to have 12,000 pounds of fuel, and we are currently showing 13.1. So looking good. And thankfully, our oil pressures are looking just fine. We only have 2 engines to help us out here, but if we lost an engine, we'd be in serious trouble. But let's continue. So things have taken a turn for the worse now. So at 9:33 a.m., without further warning, the number 3 engine failed with a loud bang, causing the aircraft to judder. It flamed out and combustion ceased. They were now flying on only 1 engine over the ocean. Eastern 855. We just lost our number 2 engine, sir. In the excitement of the moment, Thompson had called that number 2 engine instead of number 3 had failed. Okay, losing number 2. You still got 2 turning. Negative, Miami. We only have 1 now, and we're going to restart our number 2 engine. All right, Eastern 855. Okay, fine. We're listening. Okay, clear direct. Miami's altimeter 2989er, and you can descend at your discretion to any altitude you need. You're clear of traffic. Miami, okay, we need a bearing. We'd like a heading to go to 27 left. All right, Eastern 855, okay, your position right now is 70 miles southeast of Miami. You're about 14 minutes out, heading 285. 285 for Miami. Roger, Miami, 285, okay. And Eastern 855, you can plan a straight in 27 left. We're telling approach about it right now. Equipment will be standing by. All right, Roger, Miami. As the number 3 engine failed, Flight 855 was about 70 nautical miles from Miami, and Captain Body began a gentle descent while letting the speed drop back slowly. To save weight, with only 1 engine operating, Barnes started dumping some of the 17 tons of fuel on board. It would take approximately 5 to 10 minutes to dump about 10 tons of fuel, which would just leave sufficient for landing. At 15,000 feet, the number 1 engine power was increased to 1.4 EPR, and with the speed stabilized at 225 knots, the TriStar continued on a gradual descent at 600 feet per minute. The aircraft was becoming lighter and could keep flying, albeit with difficulty, on one engine. The crew completed the single-engine operating checklist, which basically rearranged the power sources of the backup systems. All secondary systems were appropriately distributed between the one remaining engine and the APU, which was still running satisfactorily. The island of Bimini passed beneath Flight 855, but it remained out of sight under a low cloud cover. A 4,000-foot runway was available at Bimini Airport for light aircraft. The weather was good, and with Miami Airport nearby, the crew felt they could make it. There was, however, no doubt now that the engine instruments were reading correctly, and that all the power plants had been starved of oil. How long would number 1 engine survive? The flight crew were not about to wait to find out, and they began the drill to start number 2 engine, which had been shut down earlier in the flight. The in-flight start sequence was not a simple exercise, and each step was carefully undertaken from the checklist. The number 2 engine instruments were checked to indicate that the engine was turning and not seized. The thrust lever was checked closed, and the tank pumps were checked on. The engine in-flight start table was entered with the aircraft altitude of about 14,000 feet and a speed of 225 knots, and the conditions were confirmed as lying in the middle of the in-flight start envelope for the engine start using the windmilling effect of the airflow. Unfortunately, the table was entered in the wrong way, with speed on the altitude scale and vice versa, and the indication that a windmilling start was possible was not correct. For such a procedure, they would have needed a speed of 285 knots. In the present circumstances, a start could only be achieved using the engine starter motor. Having incorrectly checked the details, the windmilling air start switch was selected to on to supply ignition. Nothing happened. The engine refused to start. The situation was becoming desperate, and the captain gave the order to prepare for ditching. The flight engineer now turned his attention to the ditching checklist. The flight crew donned their life jackets, the aircraft systems were tidied up by the appropriate switching, the seatbelt and no smoking signs were switched on, and in the cockpit the crew checked their seats and harnesses were secure. Barnes now called Senior Flight Attendant Alexu back to the flight deck and instructed her to initiate ditching procedures. Alexu informed the other flight attendants of the situation, and they returned to their stations and quickly made preparations to brief the passengers. The senior flight attendant announced to the passengers the captain's intention to land on water, repeating the instructions for the use of life vests which had been given as required by law before departure. On the ground, few people listened to emergency briefings, and it was deemed prudent to repeat the exercise. Many passengers were already aware that problems were being encountered, and some now became hysterical, and a handful were even close to panic. On the TriStar, there are 8 exits for evacuation, but at Flight 855, only 7 flight attendants. So helpers were requested from the able-bodied passengers. It would have been a relatively simple exercise to instruct the volunteers how to open a door on coming to a stop on the water, and that the slide raft would then inflate automatically, but unfortunately no one came forward. Some flight attendants also had to assist with the donning of the life vests and had to give individual instruction to a few people. At least 8 passengers inflated their life vests in spite of instructions to the contrary, so if an evacuation became necessary, their movements would be restricted. Passengers were also instructed to remove sharp objects, spectacles, high heels, etc., and to place their seat backs upright. They were shown the brace position for impact and told, when announced, to lean forward and grasp their ankles. They were instructed to remain seated until the aircraft had come to a halt and which exits to use for evacuation. The flight attendants then had to secure the cabin and to stow all loose objects. They were kept very busy at their tasks and, being unsure of how much time remained, were under a lot of pressure. As the activity on the TriStar continued, Miami Center called Flight 855 asking politely if they were not busy, if they could pass the quantity of fuel on board. The information might also prove useful to the rescuers. Flight crew were occupied with the emergency and Thompson missed the call. Say again? Eastern 855, if you're not busy, we need fuel on board. Okay, Miami, we have 36,000. Roger, Eastern 855. You're clear to 6 or any altitude you need. Advise. Will advise. And Eastern 855, if you can you give me a status report on how you're doing? Roger, Miami, we're doing okay. Okay, Eastern 855, your position now 59 miles southeast of Miami Airport. Turn left about 5 degrees. You're about 13 minutes out at your speed. Roger, Eastern 855. At 9:33, while approaching 12,000 feet over the ocean, the inevitable happened. As abruptly as number 1 engine failed, number 3 engine also flamed out and began to run down. So as you can see, take a quick break from that for a second. I'm just going to look around the cockpit, make sure our pressurization is looking good. I don't want us to have to ditch in Lake Ontario up ahead, right? You see, everything's looking good on our flight. But this is a pretty scary situation we're talking about. It was fitting for a Halloween flight. That's why I figured we'd have a special flight this evening and a little bedtime story for us aviation enthusiasts. So looks like we're still on track to get to Gons with plenty of fuel. So 13.1 was what we're still projecting. Still 1,000 pounds ahead of schedule. Okay, that's good. Do a quick look outside the aircraft really quickly. No snow down below at this point. Alright, let's continue with this true story. What happened to Eastern 855. So like we said, number 3 engine has now flamed out and began to run down. And the crew is just now noticed it. We're losing another engine. We've lost our 3rd engine. Okay, have you got the other one started? Asked Miami. Miami Center, not yet. Eastern 855, do you have any of them turning? Negative. The big TriStar jet was now 55 miles from Miami and was gliding without engine power. The rate of descent increased to 1,600 feet per minute with the speed constant at 225 knots. Fortunately, the APU continued to function, pressurizing the hydraulic systems via pneumatic pumps and supplying electrical power. So all the controls remained in operation and the aircraft could glide satisfactorily in this condition. The engines windmilled in silence in the airflow, and it was obvious now that oil starvation had been the cause of failure. But why had 3 good engines similarly run out of oil? Unknown to the crew, the fault lay in the maintenance procedures which had been undertaken during the previous night. The master chip detectors on each engine had been removed for analysis of the deposits and placed in plastic bags. Replacement chip detectors were normally acquired from a cabinet in the foreman's office, but in the early hours of 5th of May, none were available. These chip detectors were usually fitted with 2 oil sealant O-rings. 3 chip detectors were drawn from the stockroom, but none had the oil rings fitted, a fact which escaped the mechanic's attention. Serviceable parts tag attached to the transparent plastic package containing each fresh chip detector served to support the illusion that O-ring seals were fitted. Working by feel in dark conditions when fitting the replacement chip detectors reduced the chance of the mechanics discovering the error. To check for leaks, all 3 engines returned for about 10 seconds and no drips were noticed. It was only established later that a minimum of 30 seconds of engine motoring was required to induce leaking if oil seals were omitted. The work was duly signed off and the aircraft was released for service with the chip detector O-rings missing. In the morning when 334 Echo Alpha's engines were started and the oil systems pressurized, oil had begun to leak rapidly from the chip detector installations. After only a short period of flight, the engines were almost out of oil, and number 2 engine's remaining oil had been saved only by shutting it down. The power increase on numbers 1 and 3 engines on the climb back to Miami had probably increased the rate of oil loss in these engines, and serious damage had resulted. The bearings had become molten, and the movement of the assemblies had resulted in the drive to the fuel pump being disconnected, stopping the engines. The engines had flamed out due to the lack of fuel, but had that not happened, they would have eventually seized anyway. As the ditching drill was completed on the flight deck, Flight Engineer Barnes announced on the PA that ditching was imminent, and the passengers assumed the brace position. A second attempt to restart number 2 engine was initiated. Meanwhile, the rescue services were already in the air and on their way. As early as 9:28, the Coast Guard had been notified of the emergency by Miami, and immediately a Falcon jet and a helicopter had taken off from Opelika Coast Guard Station. Eastern 855, the Coast Guard is coming out towards you now. Roger, Miami, thank you. And Eastern 855, keep me advised of your intentions and we'll keep you on here as long as we can. Approach is also watching you at the same time. You're about 20 miles west of Bimini right now, and it looks like you're going to have to ditch. Just keep us advised. We should be able to hear you at least down to 2,500 feet. Yeah. Had the short runway at Bimini been in view as they had flown overhead, they might have tried to make it back for an emergency landing. But with the island obscured by low cloud, they didn't stand a chance. At 9:35, Flight 855 approached 10,000 feet with about 6 minutes gliding time remaining. The fuel dumping had now been completed and the aircraft weighed about 135 tons. The second attempt to start number 2 engine proved in vain, and ditching seemed inevitable. But at least the conditions were fine. Good daylight visibility, fair weather, and a calm sea. A gentle breeze was blowing, and the water temperature near the coast was a comfortable 79 degrees Fahrenheit. The crew had been well trained in ditching procedures, and all those in the cabin were prepared for the worst. Captain Body would touch down on the sea with the landing gear retracted, landing flaps set, and with the aircraft nose pitched up at 12 degrees. It had been calculated that on impact in that configuration, the wing engines, flaps, and the horizontal stabilizer would probably be torn off. Even sustaining such damage, the TriStar was still expected to remain afloat for at least 20 to 25 minutes. Although the event would be risky and an unpleasant experience for the passengers and crew, there was every likelihood that the ditching would be successful. Danger could be averted only if number 2 engine started, but so far it had resolutely refused to function. There was little hope of engines number 1 or 3 restarting, but anything was worth a try. With time fast running out, an in-flight start was attempted on each wing engine. As 334 Echo Alpha continued inexorably on its descent toward the ocean, Miami called with the latest radar position report. Eastern 855, you're 49 miles southeast of Miami right now, 12 minutes out at your speed. Miami, okay, we don't believe we can make lands. Eastern 855, okay, we've got all the help we can coming out as fast as we can. The Coast Guard aircraft was now close to the scene and the rescue pilot was listening out on the frequency. He interrupted the exchange. We're a Falcon jet coming off the beach at flying out of Opelika, called the Coast Guard to Flight 855. What's your position, sir? Miami Center had both aircraft on radar and required only a positive identification of the Falcon jet to coordinate the efforts. Okay, I'll tell you what, suggested the Miami controller. Coast Guard, just give me an ident, and I'll give you a position in relation to yourself. What code are you squawking? Squawking 1277. Okay, squawk ident. Okay, I see you there. He is 1 o'clock, your position 20 miles. I'll vector you to him. I have you radar contact. Roger, Miami. Okay, we'll be turning to about heading of 110. Okay, Falcon Jet 110. Let's make it 120. We'll intercept closer. Roger that. 120. And what's the altitude? Right now, 7,900, and he's descending slowly. Roger, we're climbing through 2,500. Roger, try heading 135, Coast Guard, 135. 135. And Coast Guard, he's 12 o'clock, 10 miles. Roger that. All right, Coast Guard's going to be right next to you here pretty soon, Eastern 855. Reassured the Miami controller. Okay, say his altitude again, sir, asked the Falcon Jet pilot. Eastern is 6,900 descending. Roger, Miami, we're 3,200 and climbing. Roger, Falcon Jet. Another 2 aircrafts already airborne from U.S. Coast Guard Air Station Clearwater, a helicopter and a C-130 were now also diverted to assist in the operation. 3 more Coast Guard choppers and another Falcon Jet were also scrambled, and at sea a Coast Guard cutter and 5 other patrol vessels were standing by. A U.S. Air Force helicopter and a C-130 were preparing to take off from their base at Homestead. It was an impressive rescue team that was being assembled, but it was just as well, for there was every indication that their services would be requested. At 9:37 a.m., the TriStar passed 7,000 feet, still flying at 225 knots. With about only 4 minutes gliding time remaining, and the attempts to start numbers 1 and 3 engines had failed and ditching seemed imminent. Body asked for guidance to land on the water as near to the shore as possible. Miami, heading direct to closest land point, please. Radioed Thompson. Okay, Eastern 855, just straight in is about the best you can do right now, the way it looks here. Are you over land now, Coast Guard? Miami, negative, sir. We're off the shore about 15 miles. Okay, Eastern is a 10-11. Turn further right another 10 degrees. He's out there about 12 o'clock. Be crossing left to right about 7 miles. Roger. Just for your information, there's a small scud, thin layer at about 4,000 feet. Okay, Coast Guard suggests you stay down. He's 5,200 descending, 855. Suggest a heading of about another 20 degrees to the right. On the eastern flight deck, the crew tried a third and final attempt to start number 2 engine. The unsuccessful windmilling start technique was abandoned and a full engine start procedure using the starter motor was implemented. It was a last effort before committing themselves to ditching. And at the same moment, the Coast Guard aircraft caught sight of the TriStar. We have him, called the Falcon Jet pilot. As Flight Engineer Barnes persevered with the in-flight drills, Miami continued to guide the rescue aircraft to its quarry. Eastern's 4,700 descending, Coast Guard. He's about 11:30, 4 or 5 miles. Miami, we have him at 12:30, sir. Okay, Coast Guard, 12:30. Keep him in sight. I'm going to stop talking. Advise approach what you have to do. Negative, sir. He just went into the clouds. Okay, he's 4,400 feet. No traffic that I can see underneath you, Coast Guard. Roger that. I'll tell you what, continued Miami. If you want to turn to a heading of 180 now, we'll bring you in behind heading 18. Make it 190. Roger, Miami, 190. And Coast Guard, he's 4,100 descending now, turning right 200 degrees. 200. Well, the time was now 9:39 a.m. and the last item of the in-flight start check was completed with the selection of the start switch to on. Shortly, body would ask for the full 33-degree flap setting, and in just over 2 minutes, they would hit the sea. Suddenly, as they had almost given up hope, number 2 engine ignited and began to run up. Slowly, its speed increased to idle, and the power remained steady. It had started. The TriStar was just passing 4,000 feet and was still 22 miles from Miami, but now they were in with a chance. We have an engine going now. We believe we can make the airport, Miami. Eastern. Okay, you say you have one of them turning, Eastern? Miami, that's affirmative. Roger, Eastern 855. The Coast Guard is going to come in behind you. He's behind you right now. Coast Guard 277, turn right, heading 250. 250 turning. Coast Guard 277. Captain Body now opened up the number 2 thrust lever to about 1.3 EPR for 30 seconds and the power held. He then increased the power to 1.5 EPR, and at 3,000 feet he managed to arrest the rate of descent. The immediate problems were now over, but the flight crew still had to complete a 1-engine approach and landing, a far from simple task on a big jet. If the approach was improperly handled, they would be back in trouble. And for how long would number 2 engine continue to function? It had been shut down by crew action earlier in the flight, so still had some oil left, but the captain was only too well aware that the oil would not last for long. If the engine flamed out on the approach over land, they would be in a worse position. Runway 30 offered the fastest time to touchdown, but no descent path signal was available from the instrument landing system, and its absence would further complicate the approach. The flight path to runway 30 also tracked a long distance over land. Runway 27 left, on the other hand, had both centerline and approach path ILS signals functioning, and the approach, mostly over water, gave a better chance of ditching if the remaining engine failed. The TriStar crew completed the checklist items of the 1-engine approach, switching half the fuel pumps off to reduce the electrical load, pressurizing the aircraft, and supplying all the pneumatic functions from the APU. Such an arrangement permitted maximum power availability from the one remaining engine. Meanwhile, the Miami controller continued his dialogue. What are your flight conditions now, Eastern? Miami, we're in the clear. Okay, Coast Guard, you should have him in sight out there. You make your right turn from 12 o'clock, 1.5 miles. Roger, sir, Miami, we have Eastern. Okay, I'm going to stop talking, Eastern. You're cleared a straight in. Contact approach if you can. Don't talk if you don't have to. Roger, Miami, cleared for a straight in. We want 27 left. Are we about pretty good for that? Eastern, just go on in. We're waiting for you. And Miami, this is the Coast Guard. We've lost him in the scud again. Okay, Coast Guard, you're coming in behind him, about 1 mile behind him. He's at 3,000 now. He's going to be 27 left. Roger. Okay, Coast Guard, you have him in sight? Negative, sir. Okay, turn right. Let's see, 300 degrees. He's looking. He's picking away from you now. He's about 3,000. Miami, we don't see him. Okay, and Eastern, he's now holding 230 knots. He's looking in pretty good shape. Okay, Miami, we're at 240 knots now, and we'll follow him all the way into the airport if that's okay with you. Okay, Coast Guard, we'll tell approach you're going to be right behind him. Change to 12685. That's 12685. That's Miami approach, and tell them you're behind the Eastern. Roger, Miami, we have a visual now. Okay, very good. At 9:43 a.m., Flight 855 intercepted the ILS for runway 27 left at a height of 3,000 feet and at a distance of just under 10 miles from the threshold. Body eased back on the power on number 2 engine and let the speed fall off gradually as he descended on the glide path. He called for the flaps to be set to 10 degrees and the landing gear to be selected down. Well, we believe we've got it made, radioed Thompson. Fantastic, shouted the Miami controller. Of course, we're cleared to land, added the captain, tongue-in-cheek. At 1,000 feet, Body was satisfied with the situation and committed the aircraft to land. The passengers were still crouching in the brace position, so Captain Thompson quickly informed them on the PA that they were about to land at Miami. It was a very relieved group of passengers and flight attendants who heard the announcement. Eastern 855, you need not acknowledge if you're still on the frequency. On landing, call point 9er. Okay, sir, Miami, thank you for your help. Certainly. At 9:46 a.m., the TriStar touched down safely on 27 left at Miami, and the tension of the emergency drained from all on board. The landing was only just in time, for the oil quantity left in number 2 engine was less than had remained in engines number 1 and 3 when they had failed, and it was very close to stopping. As the TriStar rolled down the runway, it seemed the emergency was over, but there were more problems to come. The controller radioed to say that number 1 engine was smoking, and there appeared to be a serious risk of fire. The fuel ignition switches had been left on in the forlorn hope of achieving a startup, and on the rollout, the windmilling engine was still pumping fuel. On slowing, the fuel residue began to smoke in the hot engine. Quickly, the number 1 engine fire bottles were discharged to dampen any flames. On stopping the aircraft, body received a further warning from ground personnel that number 3 engine was also smoking badly. The number 3 engine fire bottles were likewise discharged, and the fire services which were standing by also doused the wing engines with water and foam. Eventually, the smoke dispersed and the risk of fire was averted. Captain Body called for a tug to tow the aircraft to the terminal, but when informed there would be a 15-minute delay, he decided to taxi using the number 2 engine. Body opened up the number 2 thrust lever, but there was insufficient power to move the aircraft, even with the thrust lever pushed right to the stop. Within moments, power began to drop, and the number 2 engine failed. It had been very, very close indeed. The round trip had only taken 50 minutes, but had seemed to the passengers like hours. The crew had done a magnificent job in extremely difficult circumstances, and their skill and composure had saved the day. They were lucky too, of course, for if number 2 engine had not restarted, they would have been faced with a ditching. And if it had seized on the approach over land, the situation would have been much worse. But there was more. The decision to return to Miami had also been opportune, for if the flight had continued to Nassau on the lengthy approach, the engine would probably have failed before landing. And if the short runway at Bimini had been visible, the crew might have attempted a powerless or dead stick landing with possibly disastrous results. And more significantly, if the in-flight start table had been entered correctly, and the number 2 engine had been started earlier, it would undoubtedly have failed before touchdown at Miami. Flight 855 had defied the Bermuda Triangle, and at the last moment had slipped from its grasp. Had all 3 engines failed simultaneously in a more remote part of the triangle, however, it might have been a different story. The TriStar could have been forced to ditch with little or no warning, and if the landing had been on a stormy sea, the aircraft could have sunk quickly in deep waters. The incident could well have been another Bermuda mystery. Fortunately, it ended safely, and Captain Body also passed his flight check. The flight crew were each presented with an award for outstanding airmanship from the American Airline Pilots Association. And that, my friends, concludes our bedtime story for Halloween 2023. Well, that was quite a flight check. I think that's a little, I must say, that's a little more than what he probably signed on to be checking the captain off for. But it sounds like everything turned out well for them. What a flight for those guys. Well, let's take a quick look at, you can see we're getting close to Donio now. Our top of descent's coming up in just about 67 miles, so the story timed out just right for our flight this evening. Thankfully, our engines are running just fine here on the MadDog tonight. And we're not over the Bermuda Triangle, so maybe that helps. Still waiting on Jason to, our CEO here at Coastal, to get us heading out to Bermuda on some flights. Now, we do fly to the Bahamas on some legs, so I believe actually that exact same leg from Miami out to Nassau, so. But that would be a scary occurrence to have all 3 engines fail on you. That is just crazy. Alright, well, I'm going to pull up the current weather in Detroit. We'll look at that together really quickly and go ahead and start preparing for our landing there. We'll be beginning our descent here in another few minutes into Detroit. So I'll pull it up on the screen. Let's see here, internet web browser. Here's our current ATIS into Detroit. So Kilo is current at Detroit. Winds are 310. It's 8 knots, 10 miles visibility, scattered at 800. Broken now at 1300, so lower than forecast. Overcast is at 36, -1 for the temperature, -3 for the dew point, 3016 on the altimeter, and ILS Zulu runway 22 right is in use. All right, and also the RNAV Zulu 22 right. 22 left is closed, runway 4 right is closed. Runway 21 right, 3 left is closed, 21 left, 3 right closed, 27 left, 9 right closed, 27 right now. It's nighttime, so I'm guessing that's why all these runways are closed. So we're gonna be landing all the way on the far western side of the airport. Numerous taxiways closed by cones and flashers. Taxiway Romeo between Kilo and 22 left is closed. And pilots use caution for bird activity. Okay. Sounds good. Well, we have all of that now. Let's go ahead and run our performance numbers. So we're now landing, and it's going to be Detroit. Sean, I'm going to be curious to see if it shows snow on the ground in Flight Simulator when we get to Detroit. I wonder if it was enough for it to count it in the simulator. Okay, there's 22 right. We had said the winds were 310 at 8. Alright. Gotta do flaps 40. Oh man, I accidentally changed the runway here. Did not want to. That's right. Flaps 40. Altimeter's 3016 now. 3016. Temperature is -1. And auto brake, we're going to use medium. Versers, and I got to figure out our landing weight really quickly. Let's see here. Landing weight is going to be, so 9.8 is our, we're planning to land with 9,800 pounds of fuel. Our zero fuel is 102.4, which puts our landing weight at 112,200 pounds. So let me enter that here in our landing weight. $112,200, and we'll calculate everything here. Okay, so we have 10,000 feet of runway, so plenty of landing distance available according to the actual distance of 5,400 feet, factor landing distance of 6,300, so plenty of runway. Our VREF at 40 degrees of flap is 129, and then our V approach is going to be 28 knots, so yeah, up at 134 tonight. So I got that all calculated. I got it written down on my scratch pad. Let's put it into the airspeed bugs here, and put that back up. And let's go ahead and get our approach in there. I'm going to pull it up on the Navigraph charts. That'll load. So 22 right Zulu, ILS Zulu. Let's see if I can find that. A lot of approaches to choose from going into there. ILS Zulu, 22 right. Yep, that's what we're doing. So we'll go ahead and set everything up, and then we'll brief the arrival and the approach. So 111.905 and is the localizer frequency. 216 is our final approach course into 22 right. All right, 216. I can get it. Keep going past it. All right, 111.95. All right, there's 111.95.216 is set. We'll go ahead and get our identifiers ready so we can hear that one. And we're picking up the localizer. And 200 feet on the DH. Get that set. All right, and our DA is at 842, so I'll roll that down on our altimeter here, 842, perfect. And I'm gonna load it into the flight management computer really quickly. Let's see, we're still heading toward Goose, excellent. Now 22 right, Zulu ILS. There we go. Yeah, we're going to cut it in as close as we can. I'm not going to waste time on a long downwind. Alright, perfect. So we are on the Top Gun to arrival into Detroit. We did have a little bit of an update on our altimeter. It's now up at 3016, so it's raised quite a bit from earlier. So I'll get that set for our pressurization window. There we go. Speed restriction, jet aircraft descending via Mach number until intercepting 280 knots. Maintain 280 knots until slowed by the star. So we're currently coming up on Goose. Then we have Wolfman at 280 knots at or above flight level 240. Mav. Top Gun at 280 knots between 11,000 and 14,000. Hollywood between 10,000 and 8,000. Chester at 7,000, so that's going to be our bottom altitude for now. So we'll set 7,000 in the altitude window. Since it's still uncontrolled here, we'll be descending ourselves. There we go, 7,000 set and armed. Then we have Ghost at 210 knots at 7,000 feet, Rider 210 knots at 7,000 feet, and then Vectors. Then on the ILS Zulu 22 right, see our plates showing Detroit Metro, Wayne County, 24th January 2011-7, ILS Zulu 22 right. Localizer's 111.905, we have it set both sides, 216 course inbound. And on the glide slope at Jeter, we should be at 2,000 feet. LSDA is 842, also have 200 feet set in the DH. We need RBR 2400, half a mile visibility. We have 10 miles visibility. And like I was saying, our ceiling's all the way up at 1,800 feet. So pretty good conditions down there. Airport elevation 645 feet, touchdown zone 642. The pressurization is set up appropriately for that. MSA is 2,800 feet around the Detroit VOR. So we'll be coming in on a left, or maybe even a right downwind. Not sure how far out this arrival is going to take us. I think it's actually, it's probably going to end up being like a left downwind for us. We'll just cut across since no one's here. We do have a tower. It's the highest obstacle. It's 1,750 feet up to the north of the airport. Luckily, have the engine anti-ice on. So we'll keep that in mind for coming down with the clouds and probably some snow maybe on the taxiways surfaces. They might not be there since, Sean, you were saying a lot of that stuff has melted away, but we'll have it on. As we come down, looks like Nugent, we got to be at or above 3,000 feet, and then Jeter at or above 2,000 feet. That's our final approach fix. And only 22 right. Published miss, climb to 1,100, and then a climbing right turn to 4,000 outbound on the Detroit VOR 297 to don't and hold. Let's check our holds in the flight management computer here. So it's showing don't with a 117 bearing inbound and a right hand turn. So that does match. All right, we are beginning our descent now. It's good. All right, if we break out, we should see a PAPI on the right side, helping us identify 22 right, and miles are lighting. If we get to land, it's gonna be a left-hand turn off. I'm likely just gonna, let me see, I need to figure out where our parking is. Again, it's been a while since I did the charter parking here. I know Sean, you might have a good idea if you're still awake. I'm looking it up here. Let's see, Detroit, it's Swissport, which is ramp 26 up at Olympia Aviation. Okay, Olympia Aviation. I'm gonna look on Google Maps. And if you happen to know Sean, then that'd be awesome to help me out with going to the right part of the airport. I believe it was up at the... Yep, it's on the east side. Okay. All right, I'm looking. That's one of the nice things about Google Maps is you can find those FBOs a lot of times. Let's see, I gotta find the airport here. There it is. I can show y'all what I'm looking at. That way we're all on the same page here. So yeah, I'm looking at the Google Maps now. So Olympia Aviation. Off Sierra 5. Okay, let me look at that. Thank you. Oh, yep, I got it now. So Sierra 5. Yep, I remember going there now. Perfect. So that's where we're going. So if that's the case, we'll probably just roll it out all the way to the end. Exit Alpha 2 or Alpha 1, then take Quebec. Then that's going to be Quebec. Right turn Tango. Left turn Whiskey. Right turn Whiskey 6. Cross 21 left, which is closed. Sierra 6. Right Sierra. Left Sierra 5. Into parking. So that's our plan. Alright, that's all I have. If y'all have any questions, don't hesitate to speak up in the chat. Yeah, beautiful view of the lake there. Yeah, long taxi, that's right. That is right, Sean. So Sean, I'm curious, do you have a prediction? I believe you said you're a Red Wings fan. Do you have a prediction for the game between the Florida Panthers and the Detroit Red Wings coming up? Because I think on the next flight, it's going to be really short, but I'm probably going to show the highlights from the last Panthers game, Panthers and Bruins, and also the Panthers and Detroit Red Wings game. So I'll plan to stream that on Thursday night. So 2 nights from now. But be curious to get a prediction from you. I have not seen the Detroit Red Wings play yet this year, but my prediction is going to be 4-2 Red Wings win. I think they're going to get that high-powered offense going, and Florida's obviously on a road trip, and they had a pretty physical game. Went all the way into overtime the other night with the Bruins. So I think they're going to come up a little bit short against the Red Wings. 3-1 Wings. Okay, so we're both predicting the Red Wings winning. I'm going to write down our predictions just so I can remember them in a couple of nights when we review the... And honestly, I think it'd be fun. I need to talk to Jason about this. It'd be fun if we had a pick'em thing for the charter pilots. See who ends up winning at the end of the season. So maybe we can start it after the 10 game mark or something, or after the first quarter of the season even. It could be fun. But I got you at 3-1 and I'm at 4-2. Okay. Detroit wins. And I will see how our predictions do against reality here in the next few days. Hey Jason, welcome. What's up? I mean, you're up, man. It's late. Good to have you on here. I'm gonna hop into the voice channel really quickly for a minute. You can come in there if you want to. You don't have to, but still have a little bit of time before we get below 10. I'd be curious if Jason was there for our Halloween story time, Aviation edition. Yeah, I don't even remember where I got this book from. It is an old book. I think I got it from some random aviation museum when I was a kid. And yeah, it was published back in 1989. So I guess it was like, that's why they could still talk about Eastern Airlines as this recent, modern airline, whereas now you talk about Eastern Airlines, people are like, what? I've heard of them way back in the past. But they were a big airline for quite some time, a really key player in American aviation history. Oh yeah, that was a long story. But you'll have to check it out though. I mean, look up Eastern 855. I mean, it's pretty incredible what happened on that flight. And I actually had not read that account since the 1990s, so I'd forgotten a lot of what happened. Like, I read this book, when I got it as a kid, because I was like, oh, this is awesome. No, it was Eastern 855 is what this guy was saying here. And they were flying in the Bermuda Triangle. But I'll bookmark when the I'll bookmark where the story started. So if you want to hear that guy's side of the story, he does a pretty good job of telling it. It's obviously, he wrote it to be read from a book. I did my best to read it, but it's a very interesting story. And the flight crew, even where they were when they made mistakes, it actually turned out that it was a good thing they made those mistakes, because it allowed them to, allowed the situation to not be as bad as it could have been. So, very interesting account. Oh yeah, the ATC, yeah. I actually had to kind of change that, Sean. Like, I was kind of like reading ahead as I was doing it to try to add in the call signs, because in the book sometimes it doesn't really have it there, but it'll tell you, I don't know. But thank you. Yeah, it's probably, you slept through the scariest part, so I'm glad, if you're a passenger on that flight, you wouldn't want to be awake for some of those harrowing moments where they lost all 3 engines, Jason, at one point over the Atlantic Ocean between Nassau and Miami. Like, that's a bad day right there. In an L-1011, losing all 3 engines. Near a glider over the ocean at under 10,000 feet at 225 knots airspeed. But anyways, let me do the descent check really quickly. Engine sync is off. Pressurization is set and checked. Hydraulics on and high. Altimeters are set. 3016. Landing data, airspeed bugs set. Descent check complete. All right. And I'm gonna make a quick call on radio here. Looks like Minneapolis Center's online, but nobody in Detroit. Okay. And Detroit Metro Wayne International, Uptime 5800 MD-83, 30 miles east, inbound to land, runway 22 right, full stop, Detroit. Yeah, Sean, they lost all 3 engines. Like it was pretty incredible. It was pretty crazy. But fuel or aliens, Ash, gotta. I mean, I can tell you. I can tell at this point in the stream. Yeah, I'll tell you. A mechanic had pulled out metal chip detectors in the engines, and when he put in the replacement chip detectors, he did not put oil O-rings on them, and he was doing it in a dark environment, and there was something that was on the chip detectors that made him think that there were O-rings when there weren't. So basically, the engines got to below their normal operating oil quantities right after takeoff, and then started failing in sequence on the way to Nassau. So yeah, pretty bad stuff. Horrible. But yes, it probably took about 35-40 minutes to read that account of it in this book, but Mr. Stewart does a good job of describing it. It was pretty crazy. All right, we'll go ahead and flip on our engine anti-ice as we get down into the Detroit area. All right, coming up on 10,000 feet now. It looks like our next speed restriction is going to be at Ghost. We're going to be at 210 knots. We'll go ahead and bring out our wing landing lights. It'll give us a little extra drag. Well, I'm not seeing any snow yet, Sean. I was wondering, you said it was just a little dusting there in Detroit. That must not have been enough for Flight Simulator to pick it up. Man, we are beating these Mad Dogs up. Yes, sir, we are. Doesn't matter what hour of the day it is, even at midnight. We're beating them up. And I saw you were flying last night. I fell asleep early last night. Whoa. Don't dive that much, buddy. This dog gets really mad. I hear it barking there. It's like, slow down. I don't really want to bring the flaps or leading edge devices out any sooner than I have to, since we're technically in icing conditions every time we're in these clouds here. So I get a good view of what it's looking like heading toward the airport pretty soon. But alright, we gotta get the leading edge devices out now, since we gotta slow to 210 knots. So there we go. And let me get the bells for the gentleman in the back. There we go, flight attendants. Alright, we'll get our track IR working again. There we go, it's working. Rider's our last fix before so maneuvering speed at flap 0 is 171, so we have enough of a buffer. Just don't want anything. It is insane how much ice. I mean, I haven't flown a MadDog, but I just know in the CRJ, And it would happen flying into Detroit all the time. Like if you started bringing flaps out early in these clouds, man, you would pick up so much ice. And then I mean, thankfully on our charter, we're going to be on the ground a while. But I mean, if you're trying to do a quick turn on a line flight, you don't want to pick up any more ice than you have to. Because hopefully if it's warm enough on the ground, then you can, say I want to take it down. You won't have to de-ice, you know, save you a lot of time. Honestly, that saves the airline a ton of money if you don't have to de-ice. Very expensive. Hey, Jose, I'm going to Detroit right now, Detroit International, and see if I can. Want to see if I can pull it up on here. All right, so we'll turn it on down there. We gotta once we get past. Nugent, so I'm gonna turn us toward our final approach. Right there. And we're gonna take it down to. Gotta get the plate up on my side here. 22 right. I actually had it on the Navigraph, so I'll get that. Awesome. Well, thank you, Jose. Yeah, absolutely. Love to have you subscribe, be a part of the channel. And you get the latest updates, especially this next week heading to World Flight. So hopefully I'll have some information on that and ways you can follow along and watch that too. All right, let's put 2,800. I'm going to set this down at 3,000 for now. Stay above the MSA. And we'll take it to 210. Just going to take it down at idle. Here we go.
Landing gear. Landing gear. Landing
Yes, thank you, Betty. I'll use your G-rated name here. Just call you Betty. Those of you that have been around these older airplanes for a while, you know her full name, but I won't repeat that on the air. Alright, yeah, we're gonna get down in plenty of time. So see, I'm just gonna hold off putting anything out. And when we're in these icing conditions in these clouds, I just don't wanna have any more out than we have to. Just avoid collecting ice. It's never a good thing. And Detroit Metro Wayne International Airport traffic, Riptide 5800 MD-83, 15 miles, actually, correction, 20 miles north, inbound, runway 22 right, ILS, Detroit. Alright, I'm going to arm localizer, view our loc. Should be intercepting it soon. Jose, yes, we are almost there. We are only about 17 nautical miles from the runway right now, so we're going to be there very, very, very shortly. So almost there. And yeah, still no sign of snow out there, Sean. Man. I wonder how quickly the simulator updates the snow cover maps, because I know if there's active snow, it'll show snow on the ground, but then I know it has those snow cover maps that are active during the winter months that you can see.
Landing gear. Landing gear.
Yes, Betty, thank you.
Landing gear.
All right. We started our flight in Boston, Jose. So this is actually a simulation of the Florida Panthers NHL team and their FMS over right here, the charters. So we do that with
Landing gear.
Coastal Airways.
Landing gear.
Definitely ILS weather here. Yep, Boston, that's right. Thank you, Jason. We shipped up out of Boston this time. Make sure I already had this selected to medium. That'll just save me some time here in a second. Already got the. Let's switch the ignition over. We've already been here for quite a few minutes, so we're going to switch over to B for the rest of the flight. Jose, no, this is going to be my only flight tonight. It's almost 2 in the morning where I am, so I got to get some sleep for work tomorrow once I finish this. And yep, let's go ahead, gear down, flaps 5. Let's slow us to 180 now. You have Minneapolis on Friday, awesome. Yeah, I look forward to seeing that new scenery, Jason. Are you gonna pick it up? 3 flaps 15. I don't know why every time I come into land, frame rates are crazy, but then like when you take off, they're always fine. So it's only when I'm streaming though. So I don't know what it is. Alright, so localizer should be coming in shortly. And glide slopes, we're already disconnect the autopilot. Runway's in sight, there it is. Localizer's now coming alive. And my zoom went crazy on me. There we go. And we're gonna just have to go around here. We're way too high. My frame rates are crazy. Hold up one second. Let me stop the track IR. I can't see anything. Alright. Alright, we're just gonna level off here at 2,000. Actually, so let's level off at 2,000. Let's take it back up to 180 knots. Flaps 15. And Detroit traffic, Riptide 5800 is going around. We're gonna do right traffic, runway 22 right, 2,000 feet. Detroit. Alright. You're up too, we don't need that down. There we go. Let's see, Jose, when am I going live next time? Probably like Thursday night. I'm actually gonna fly Detroit to Chicago midway on Thursday night, so yeah, I'm gonna have to leave track IR off. I'm just getting too many crazy frame rates and such here. I'm gonna turn the autopilot back on to reduce the workload, especially with the, whoa, that thing went crazy. Especially with the frame rates being like they are for me. This is rather difficult. Alright, we're gonna, I might just have to hand fly it, that's fine. Turn the flight director off. We're just gonna do raw data. Boop-a-doo.
Altitude. Altitude.
Yes, Betty. I'm taking it down to 2,000.
Altitude.
Trees look, I know, they do look good. I agree. I need to be able to look over here at the runway. I can't see it. There's our crosswind. We're gonna take it on up to the downwind now. I don't want to get too high. Detroit International Traffic, Riptide 5800, turning right downwind, runway 22 right, Detroit. Technically, 2100 should be our pattern altitude. Whoops, don't want to do that. I can't do the. Oh well, I'll just fly it like this. I can't hold tab and try to get the 100. Let's see, there we go, now I can see it. We're on a good right downwind. 180 knots. I'm just gonna plan to intercept out there at, what is that? Jeter. Alright, so we've already done our this over here. Yeah, I'm gonna take it all the way out to Jeter so that we'll have plenty of time to come back in. That's 5 miles out, which is 1,500 feet AGL.
Altitude.
So
Altitude.
got distracted with my altitude there. Jose, could you fly over a location called Maricopa, Arizona to Phoenix? I could maybe at some point. Yeah, probably not with the Coastal Airways. I mean, I think we fly to Phoenix for some of these charters with the NHL teams. I'm not sure if the Panthers are going out to Phoenix this year or not, but yeah, I mean, I could look. If I'm out there, yeah, stay tuned. I'll let you know. Let's go ahead, gear down, flaps 15. We'll slow us to. So we turn this off. 160 now. I am from Tennessee, Jose. 160. I am from Tennessee, so it's quite late at night, early in the morning right now where I am. Quite late. That's 15. Alright, we'll start our base turn. And Detroit International Traffic, Riptide 5800, right base, runway 22 right, Detroit. Flap swing. Alright, we'll try to get it right at 2,000. Gotta get our trim going here. So like we said, our approach speed is 134. $2,100 is actually where I want to be. Alright. Pretty good. We'll keep this turn coming in here. Alright, there's our glide slope coming in. Go ahead and arm this so I don't want to get busy here in a second. Man, flaps 40, let's slow it down to 134. That's where we're supposed to be. 134 set. All right. All right, before landing check, landing gears down, 3 green. The ignition B or A, yeah, it's on B, set. Spoiler ABS is arm. I gotta turn this on. There we go. And laps and slats are 40-40 set. We have a 25 knot crosswind. Didn't notice that. It's just crazy. I was like, man, we were like blown all the way over to 22 left there. Good thing there's nobody here. You'd be getting my ear chewed off at the. I can't see the. I can't even see the runway. Hold up. Yeah, look at this. This is quite the crab. This is a great. This is a great approach for 2 in the morning. This is fun though. I love it. All right. So auto throttle is coming off. I need to have that off. Let me get back in the middle here. Yeah, winds have died off, down to 10 knots now. So it's just strong winds when you get up above the surface right now. Our speed's good. Sync's at 700. We're looking good. Frame rates have calmed down too.
Minimums.
Visual. Nugent.
50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
Alright. Yeah, I'm actually just going to keep the reversers at idle there. We're going to roll it all the way down. Cut off the auto brakes. There we go. Let's see if I can turn this on. Thanks, Sean. Thanks. Yeah, we had to go around that first time. I was like, this is not gonna work. Don't ever want to force it. Actually thought for a second about going around the second time, but nobody was here and we had plenty of time to correct back to center line. Those strong winds, just a couple thousand feet off the ground, caught me off guard there the second time around because it's pretty light on the surface, but and they're screaming. You go up 2,000 feet. All right, here we are at the end of the runway. We're gonna turn off here. Long taxi. I'll pull up the airport diagram here in just a minute after I clean up everything. Alright, we are safely on the ground. And Detroit International Traffic Riptide 5800 MD-83. Clear runway 22 right, taxiing to Olympic Aviation via Quebec. Detroit. I'll do the rest of it later. Let's get those flaps in. You turn off the Morse code identifiers. I know we don't want to listen to those the whole time. Get some of these lights off. So yeah, the Florida Panthers should be flying in here tomorrow morning, or this morning, I guess, about arriving in Detroit at about, noon. Get the engine anti-ice off. Jose, you said do a video of a flight from Guerrero and pass by a place called Miñaca to Chihuahua Airport. Okay, that'd be cool. I did do some flying through Mexico a little bit on a world flight tour I was doing, or a world tour. I was not world flight, but world tour I was doing. I think I'm actually somewhere like south of Mexico City right now, and I just haven't done it in a long time. I started doing a lot of the coastal airways flying, which is a lot of fun. So it's kept me busy, which is perfectly fine. Alright, got our APU started up. This timer restarted. Tell we're much lighter now. The engines are having no trouble keeping us moving at flight idle. Alright, so Sean, we were talking about this last night. Do you see there is a new Boeing field in development? I did not see that. That sounds, I think, well, it seems like the one that's there is pretty good, right? Sean and Jason, y'all been to it. At least from what I've seen in Jason's streams. I have not been there yet, but oh, look at the guys doing de-icing up there. You can see the truck spraying on a Delta plane. That's pretty cool. Love it. Alright, we said, here we pull up the when we get to 2 minutes, I'm going to shut down number 2. Alright, but the new one will be good. Okay, cool, cool. Alright, we're going to take a turn here on Tango. Clear to the right. Yeah, definitely. And it looks like fall out here, I will say that, with the trees the way they are in Detroit. Oh, Driswick, yeah, they do really good scenery, so that probably will be top notch. That's just so cool, seeing the de-icing trucks out there. Iceman is busy. Very fitting. We had the Top Gun arrival, and French, I always call the ice truck Iceman, usually most places. Sorry, I'm having all sorts of... I need to just go to bed, guys. Like zooming in and out. I was fit to fly when this flight began, but I'm fading fast. Alright, so we're going to continue here on Tango until we get to Whiskey, so it's going to be a little bit of a taxi. But we're getting a good airport tour here. Yeah, you're fading fast too, Jason. Yeah, it's late. It is late. So yeah, your next flight is not till Friday though, right, Jason? I think that's what you were saying. And I'm, yeah. No, these late night flights, it's when weird stuff happens. But, I mean, honestly, just go around if it's not looking good, so. Fly a traffic pattern. And I was trying to flip the autopilot on, it was just being crazy aggressive. I guess I could have left it on, but it's like, man, just ripping that nose up, just hand fly it. Alright, White Plains to Minneapolis. Nice. Yeah, that'll be a little bit of a haul. Alright, so like we said, we're taking a left turn on Whiskey now. So here comes a Whiskey. Clear on the right, clear on the left. There's another Delta plane de-iced. Oh, you're saying you might leave out of Newark then, Jason, on Friday night? Okay. I will say the Newark scenery is really good. Can't remember who made it, but it's a really good scenery. Like I've been there quite a few times with the soccer charters and the Florida Panthers charters now. Alright. I should probably try to find the GSX profile really quickly, and I'm going to wait to shut down the engine until we get across the runways, because I know typically you don't want to shut down an engine until you're not going to cross any more runways, just in case you need the power. I know this late at night, it's probably not going to make a difference, but northeast parking. Gozuki doesn't. Okay, cool. Maybe it's just where it said parking. Maybe that's where. Gotta find my if I get all the way there and I haven't found it, I'm just parking. So try northeast parking. Let's see. Nope. North parking. That's not gonna be it, I don't think. Yeah. Should be like east parking, because we're going over here. So we're gonna turn right at Whiskey 6, which is coming up. I'll make a radio call for us crossing this runway. Even though it's closed, we'll make a... Well, I don't know what parking spot GSX thinks we'd use, but alright, anyways. Here's Whiskey 6, we're clear on the left. And Detroit International Traffic, Riptide 5800, MD-83 crossing runway 21 left, Whiskey 6, Detroit. Got our lights on. We're clear right, nobody's coming that way. It's good. Alright. Yeah, right turn on Sierra now. And Detroit International Traffic, Riptide 5800, clear runway 21 left, Sierra 6. Game parking to Olympic, Detroit. Alright, good night, Jason. Thanks for tuning in. See ya really soon then. Have a good night. Alright. Get the lights configured here. Do you have DTW disabled in GSX? I believe I do, yes. I can't remember what parking it was on my GSX profile. I'm guessing it's gotta be this parking one here. So maybe if I just, let's see. I can do show me the spot. Let's see if it's anywhere close. Nope. I remember parking here with, I came here with the Panthers long ago, back in like April, before the playoffs started. And I remember parking somewhere in there, and then they would just like walk over. But usually it'll have like, I don't know. There's just so many parking positions. 26, 27, 28, okay. Let's see. Ooh, this looks like it might be promising. Yep, this is gotta be it. See, there's 28 right in front of me. Let me, thank you. Thank you, Sean. And I need to keep, hold up, a good list of all the parking spots in GSX. Alright. No, I do not need follow me. I think, hold up. Yep, this is the one. There he is waiting for us. I'm glad I kept my engines running so I can make this maneuver. Yeah, we have plenty of clearance, wing clearance on the right. Thank you so much, Sean. Is there any snow in the forecast between now and Thursday for Detroit? You got it, lady. I'm gonna just straighten up here, and there we go. All right, we have made it. And let's make sure we got the APU power on. It's good. Get the APU air on, and I'm gonna shut these engines down. All right, excellent. Let's turn off the track IR. And let's get go through our checklists. You don't think so? Okay, cool. So we shouldn't have to de-ice on the way out of here then, more than likely. Get the GPU out here. And what else we need to do? Got the transponder off, oh yeah, it still has the leading edge devices out. I don't know why it always leaves that. Alright, as soon as I get the ground power out here, which I can't remember if they get here quickly or not. Might take a little while if they have to bus it over. Let's go ahead and do the parking check. Parking brake is set, flaps, slats up, lights out, fuel levers off, hydraulics are... I'll leave them on for just a second. Let me get the beacon off now that we got the... Hydraulics are on for now. Beacon's off, oil and hydraulic quantity checked. After, or the parking check complete. Alright, we'll go ahead and request deboarding. We'll get everybody off of the plane. And I'm going to go ahead and file our ACARS report. So we have officially made it here to Detroit at the Florida Panthers here. And Sean, Jason, Jose, Norfolk, appreciate all of y'all being on board tonight and listening. Hope you enjoyed the Halloween story about the true real life event of Eastern Airlines Flight 855 from Miami to Nassau back in I believe it was 1983. But glad that everybody survived that event. That would have been absolutely terrifying. And thankfully we had somewhat uneventful flight here. Just had to do a go around, there at the end. But that's one thing. You always have to be ready to go around when you're flying. If it doesn't look good, just go around. It's not worth trying to force it on the ground. Any good chief pilot or captain or they would rather you go around than try to force a landing and bend metal or hurt people. So don't be scared to go around. I know we as pilots a lot of times we just want to get on the ground and make it work, but it's not worth it. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and sign off for now. Appreciate y'all being on board. Planning to stream again Thursday night, Detroit to Chicago Midway. That's going to be a really short flight, but should be a lot of fun. And I've never been to the Midway Airport in Flight Simulator, so I do look forward to that. And I'll plan to see y'all then, probably about 11 o'clock Friday night. For now, VRAF Simmer signing off. Have a good night.